my name's Caspar. I'm actually a little bit depressed standing here because people at school used to call me Cass, and I hated it, and I've always insisted on being called Caspar, but I now realize that I made a fundamental error, because if I'd been called Cass, I'd probably be CEO of Xaxis right now with a 3-letter name. Instead, I have 6 letters in my name, which I think, if memory serves me correctly, means I'm going to open a restaurant, which is a little weird, and I can't cook paella nor anything else. The cheese thing is awesome. My only tip, butter in your bolognese sauce before you serve it. Works every time. Right, audience buying and how it's changing everything. So we've had a lot of very interesting conversations today about connections, and I guess, just to sort of start with the theme of connections, I guess where I sort of see our role in the space of connections, it's about connecting data and inventory and publishers with using technology to create a much more direct connection between advertisers and their audience. So I wanted to start with just an example. So I know there are a bunch of brands in the room. I don't know if are there any publishers in the room, by the way? I wasn't sure if there's any publishers. A couple of publishers, yeah, cool, all right. So I thought I'd start with an example. So let's just say, for example, we're advertising Lexus. So I'm a media agency buying a campaign for Lexus. It's a new Lexus. Absolutely nothing wrong with this, but I might, put that ad on the car website. Right? Makes sense. You're advertising to people who are interested in buying a car. The logical thing is to put the ad on a car website, to negotiate for that placement, buy a certain number of impressions, and put the ad on the car website. So here's my Lexus ad on a car website. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. People on that website probably are interested in cars. The problem is they might be interested in used cars, not new cars. They may be interested in selling a car, not buying a car. They may be interested in a totally different kind of car to the one we're advertising. This is, I guess, an SUV. They might be interested in sports cars or something else. Or indeed, cars are, I like cars. Actually, I'm in the market for a car right now, but I'm not always in the market for a car, and I go on lots of car websites. That doesn't necessarily mean that you can infer that I'm in the market for a car. So, I think it was P&G marketing director many years ago said, I know that half my advertising money is wasted. I just don't know which half. I think this is a really great example of that, because there are lots of ways you can slice and dice this example to show that that's actually potentially very, very wasteful. So what we're much more interested in is using data and technology to target audiences very directly, no matter where they are on the internet. So I'm really looking at people who are actually in the market for a car. So lots of data points. Let's just say, for example, that we know that this person has a strong credit rating, recent mother, net income over a certain amount. Has been searching for lots of new car-related terms, recent browsing on car websites, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a bunch of different data points there, and I'll talk about how we use different data points in a second, but where we can construct a profile of that person. Not the person, actually, but a cookie. It's all anonymous and very compliant and all that kind of stuff. But, and I'll come back and talk about the privacy directive as well, obviously something we're very involved in on behalf of WPP. But we'll take not this person, but a certain number of hundreds and thousands of cookies, all of which show certain data points, which means that those cookies, i.e. the people who are on those computers, are interested in buying a car. So I no longer care where that ad is. I'm much more interested in the person who's sitting there looking at the ad, right? So we already saw this person also happens to be recent mother, so probably on lots of parenting websites, and here's my Lexus ad, right? That person maybe, I sometimes think of this, there's this great sort of concept of remnant inventory in the media space, right? Who's ever been on a website and gone, oh my gosh, I've just gone into remnant inventory territory? I haven't. But if you're on the 4th page of a book review, or on the 3rd page of a sports story, you're probably in remnant inventory territory. There's no sales force out there selling that page to an advertiser. But does that make me any less in the market for a car, just because I'm on the 4th page of a book review? Does it make me any less interested in, say, it doesn't. So the audience is just as valuable. And that was actually the game we played was at Stream, was if you know something about the audience, advertisers are prepared to pay more for that audience because they know they're actually targeting that audience, and publishers are able to monetize that inventory at a much higher price as well. Anyway, so back to audience buying. So what that means, of course, is that the same website can target 3 different people with 3 different ads depending on the data that we know about those people. So you get very, very targeted advertising campaigns as a result. What do we need to do that? Well, I talked before about data inventory and technology. I'm not going to talk much about inventory and technology. I'm going to talk a little bit about, obviously, given the context for the meeting today, a little bit about data. We sort of think about data in three ways. So first of all, there are a huge number of companies out there that sell data. There's Blue Skies, there's all sorts of companies out there. There's also a lot of companies from a WPP point of view that we leverage, or we prefer to leverage as much as possible. And Compete is definitely one of those companies. We have a very close relationship with Kantar Media. A lot of our clients are also clients of Kantar Media. So for us, within WPP, it's very important that we can help the research agencies and the data companies within WPP make their insights and their data actionable. We've talked a lot about real-time actionability. It's a fascinating topic for me because a lot of the technology we have enables us to to action the data that we get from companies within WPP, but also companies in the third-party ecosystem in a real-time environment. So lots of third-party data providers, lots of decisions that need to be made. So a lot of our, we have teams of analysts who basically look at which data is performing on which clients and which ones aren't. Which data do we continue to buy? A lot of this data is very expensive. And which data don't we? So that's, this is a list of, again, I'm not going to go into the details here, but of, some of the data that we can buy in that third-party ecosystem. So that's all what we think of as third-party data that we need to buy in to be able to create segments. I don't know if anyone's ever tried this, but a really fun little thing to do is if you go on that URL, I'm not going to do it now because I don't know whose computer this is and it seems unfair. But you can Blue Sky will tell you everything they know about you, which is actually quite fun and interesting. So I've blocked out the income there because they obviously didn't realize I worked for WPP and grossly overestimated what I earned. But then well, that was pretty impressive, just not true. But then they also think I'm sort of 50 to 59, so I'm not. And it recently graduated also. So I mean, it's not perfect. Certainly, the information that Blue Sky has. We also know that Blue Sky data in the UK isn't anywhere near as advanced and as detailed or as accurate as the Blue Sky data in the US. So I actually think it actually shows that that's the case. But you guys can go on there and have a look. It's instructive. And Blue Sky, of course, use this also as a way to then, much like Google do as well, with their own version of this, to then select and say, look, this is true, this is false, or this is what I'm actually interested in, so you can actually opt into things. Right. This is a quick slide, and I don't know this case in detail, so please don't ask me any questions about this, but this is an example from the US where we actually used some Compete data to initially define what the audiences were and what those audiences' surfing behavior and online behavior was, and for a particular client, defining at the top of the funnel, and I'll come back to talk about how we use data at different points of the acquisition funnel, very much at the top of the funnel, to define where their audiences, in a prospecting sense, when they're prospecting for audiences, where their audiences are online. So they could then, again, we could use that to extrapolate out where the audience might be. And you can see, a huge increase in brand awareness and also in purchase intent. So, a really good case study, and we're trying to do more with Compete in the US, and I'm sure we'll do the same in the UK. The other kind of data is what we sort of call, sort of second-party and first-party data. So, because of WPP, because through Group M we have a lot of publisher relationships, we're able to create data arrangements with them where we can collect data on the campaigns that we run on their websites. We can look at search, et cetera, to create audience segments, and then we have a proprietary modeling algorithm which then extrapolates that out across the whole internet universe. And then lastly, we have what we think of as first-party data, which is the data which is very much our clients' data, and that data is sacrosanct to our clients. Where do we use that data? So if you think about the way I'm not going to go into a pitch about Xaxis, but I think it is useful about awareness, engagement, and action. We've put together data, inventory, and technology in different ways, depending on where your marketing problem is. I think just a small, my background, I came from a technology company. We used to be fantastic at pitching our technology. We used to talk about our technology all the time. We used to lose the agencies on slide one because, and guilty of that as well, because no marketer, sorry, So again, no agency has ever had a brief from a client that says, I want you to use some RTB inventory using third-party data from here and there with a CTR. That's not how you get, I don't know if you've ever briefed your agency like that, but you probably, maybe you have, probably not. Good. I was worried that you were looking at me going, I brief like that all the time. Usually you're saying, I've got a product I'm launching. It's new. I don't know anything about this audience. I've never done this before. I don't know. It's like maybe they're this, maybe they're that. Tell me. Or maybe you're saying, back to my car example. I've had so many people on my website, but only 5% of them booked test drives. How can I get the other 95% back again? So depending on, that's the kind of brief that our agencies get. And so we've created the Xaxis product suite to mirror that. And there are various products within each of these. Again, I won't go into those. But each of them looks at data and inventory and technology in a different way to deliver on that brief very specifically, in a benefit-led way. So we don't talk about the technology or anything like that. But obviously here in the awareness point, it's really about the kind of data that Compete can provide us as well. So second-party, third-party data sources. And then as you get further down the funnel, you get increasingly more specific to the data we've already collected for that client. A really cool example of this of a campaign we've worked with, or a company we work with a lot, is in the movie industry. So they go through this funnel constantly. It's really interesting. They've got a new release. They don't know they sort of know who their audience is, who the target for that film release is, but we need to then do the work to see where we can and how we can target those people online. Later on, when you know who's engaged with the advertising and you know who's been on the website, the DVD release becomes a totally different data set. You're looking at the data that we've already collected for that client, which is specific to that particular release. So as you go down through this funnel, the way that we use data changes.